Welcome back to World-Beater Wrestling. Today's theme is grappling. I'm talking Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, Sambo, freestyle wrestling, catch wrestling, Greco-Roman wrestling, every grappling art form you can think of, exactly how and why it relates to pro wrestling, and 10 reasons why it should form a really major part of every pro wrestling curriculum around the world. Okay, so we're talking grappling, and this is obviously a heavily biased topic for me because it's a style I've always loved and used in my pro wrestling. Coming up as a teenager, I wasn't much of an acrobat. I wasn't strong, couldn't do the power moves. So for me, the ground game was something that resonated really well. I could do the submissions. As long as I didn't have to lift someone up or jump off the top rope, I was pretty confident. So I would study that style, and I really enjoyed using it in my game. And I felt like a lot of others were terrified of it. Perhaps for me, I understood it a little bit better. For them, maybe the punches and kicks, the body slams, the power bombs, the character work was something they understood more. And obviously, you're going to go towards what you're more confident in. As I grew up in pro wrestling, I got into catch wrestling, a little bit of training in that, some freestyle wrestling, and more recently, I've trained and competed in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's something that I think is so important to every pro wrestler. You know, a lot of people, I think, look at technical wrestling as submission wrestling. Wrestling with a style where you put a lot of submissions on and locks and holds and all the rest. I don't believe that to be true. I think technical wrestling is just good fundamental wrestling. And to be a good technical wrestler, you don't necessarily have to ever lock on a submission hold. There are so many ways that being a good technical wrestler, that being understanding the counters and the principles behind the actions and the transitions. There are so many ways that can add to the style of any wrestler around the world. Doesn't matter where they're from, what size they are, what style they use. So I do have 10 reasons why I think it is so important, how you can apply it to your game, and why it should be part of every pro wrestling curriculum from the beginners right through to the advanced trainees. First reason why is it helps you to sell realistically. If you don't know what pain is, if you don't understand the pain of being put in an arm bar or a knee bar or a choke or anything like that, then how are you possibly going to sell it in the right way? I think as pro wrestlers, we are almost method actors. I've said this before. And you kind of have to know what it feels like to emote the correct emotions. The second reason is being able to apply holds realistically. And one of my biggest pet peeves is when people put on submission holds with a whole heap of air, a whole heap of space, and you just know there's really no force being put on the joint. And this is why I hate the term rest holds so much, because even though sometimes you do have to slow down the tempo and pacing of a match, which is another video I'm going to have out soon, every hold should be either working down a joint, bringing you closer to victory, or the submission hold itself should be almost at the point where they have to tap out and give up and give you the victory. So everything should be applied with maximal effort. The third reason I think grappling helps is footwork. And in pro wrestling, we often teach to minimize our footwork, not take too many steps because it makes our work clunky. The same goes for grappling. In grappling, whether it's standing takedowns or work on the ground, you want to be efficient with your movements. You want to take the minimal amount of steps, and you want to step in certain positions and ways that creates the ultimate leverage and breaks down their base. So I think footwork is an important one. Whether you want to be a submission wrestler or not, having good footwork absolutely applies to every style in pro wrestling. The fourth is possibly one of the most important, and that's the ability to stay calm under pressure. As someone who's wrestled for a long time and competed in jiu-jitsu tournaments occasionally, I know how difficult it is to relax when you have people watching you, you have competition on your mind. All those times that you prepared and trained and all the rest, they go out the window as soon as the adrenaline dump hits. So being able to control your breathing is a massive one, and it's hard to train for, but I guess the more you compete and the more you have those 100% effort competitions, the more you're going to put yourself in a better spot when you do get in front of a large crowd. The benefit of jiu-jitsu is that you do, at training, spar at 100%. You might have 3, 4, 5, up to 10 rounds in a row with a new opponent, with a better opponent, and you are going at 100% trying to submit them, trying to get into better positions. So you are forced to control your breathing. If you don't, you get gassed, you lose. Number 5 is tempo, and I think that the tempo that we would use in a grappling competition, particularly jiu-jitsu, maybe not quite the same with freestyle wrestling, which is often at a higher tempo, but the grappling tends to match what we do in pro wrestling. We're never going at 100% speed for the entire match, because then it all becomes white noise. We have periods of slow and periods of fast, and it's exactly the same as any Brazilian jiu-jitsu contest. Number 6 is the ability to control a green or unwilling opponent. And there are often occasions where the person you're wrestling is not moving with you. They're not cooperating. They're not going in the ways that you need them, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally. Knowing how to grapple, knowing how to clinch, knowing how to move someone legitimately in a safe way is going to allow you to move them into any position you need without injury, without ruining the flow of the match, and without making it look clunky and messy. Number 7 is that it gives you creative ways to set up your moves and counter out of your opponent's moveset. As I said previously, being a good grappler does not mean that you have to be a submission wrestler. And knowing different ways to get in and out of holds and moves to get into whatever you need to go to next means you're going to be in better control of the match. You're going to be able to do more unique things that makes you different from the rest of the roster, and you're going to have more confidence in the ring, especially when things really go astray. Number 8 is conditioning. Enough said, it gets you fit. And I don't think there's a whole lot that gets you in pro wrestling ring shape. In fact, I don't even think grappling gets you in pro wrestling ring shape, but it sure as hell gets you closer than doing 4,000 squats and running laps around a building. Pro wrestling is obviously a very disciplined sport. You do have to be highly disciplined in many ways to get through the training and to succeed. And the same goes for any martial art. It teaches you to control your ego getting into a martial art, grappling in particular, because on any given day, you're going to get tapped out several times on the mats, or you're going to get pinned several times on the mats. No matter how good you get, there's generally going to be someone who's better. Or it might not be your day, but everyone gets humbled at some point. And that doesn't necessarily happen so much in pro wrestling. And the 10th reason why you should get into grappling is because you should know your history. Hashtag that one, bro. Pro wrestling comes from catch wrestling. And I think that while things are going to change and evolve over time, as they always do, hey, even in martial arts, the skills and styles change over time. I still think it's important to know the past, to understand the past, and understand how that brought us to the future. So there you have it, 10 reasons why I think grappling is the ultimate martial art for pro wrestling. Of course, I would love to hear from you. If there's any martial art that you may have practiced and the ways that you might think that it's important for pro wrestling, or maybe it's helped you in your journey, drop it in the comments box below. I want to thank you for watching. Of course, if you have not already, please hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell, and I will see you next week for another episode of World-Beater Wrestling.
If you want to see more videos like this, click on the subscribe button, spread the word, and if you have any questions or requests for World-Beater Wrestling, don't be afraid to comment below.